Okay, so at this point, I'm kind of basically ready for the render, right? So usually what I do is I go to Shading Workspace, because Shading Workspace kind of lets me see kind of overall, the view, everything like that. One of the first things I usually do is go to the little V right here, right? Because remember, there's that little V that's kind of right here next to your outliner, kind of in between the view presets. It's a little V pointing to the left. We click on that, and that opens this up. Now you'll notice that there is a 3D viewport here, right? There is a View tab, right? When you click on that V, it opens this up, and there's a lot of these little tabs here. One of them is called View. And you'll notice there's one that's called Camera to View, right? So what we do is we kind of turn on Camera to View, and then I actually usually go to View, Cameras, and set Active Object as camera, or Active Camera, sorry. So like I said, I always kind of go here to click on that V to open this up, click on the View tab, and we check this one on, right? And what it does is going to, like I said, it's basically going to set your camera to use normal view navigation, right? I like it better. So I go to View, Cameras, Active Camera, and now we can see that the actual camera that's in the side of the scene is what we're using for viewing. But you'll notice by turning this on, our regular navigation works, right? Alt and our mouse buttons, Alt left, middle, right, can allow us to zoom, rotate, scale, right? So it's kind of one of the things I like doing with that, right, is turning camera view on, then go to View, Cameras, Active Camera, and then we can kind of basically set this up, right? Now, one of the other things we want to do for rendering is to go to the actual light, right? So I'm going to click on the light here. Remember, there is a default light, and we want to turn the eyeball on for it and select it, right? Once we've selected it, particularly in the outliner, you'll see that there kind of that what's usually kind of a green triangle or a green curve now looks like a light bulb, right? So there's one green icon on all these property menus, and it now looks like a light bulb because we've got a light selected. Now in this case, usually your default light is a point light. I like switching it to a sun, right? Now, one of the things I can also do is I can move my camera around a little bit here. Your light is selected, W moves, right? And I could just move, E for rotate, and I can always just kind of rotate this camera or this light just to give me kind of a better view the way I like to see this, right? There we go. And remember, one of the things you could do is material previews on. I could always turn on scene lights right here so we can kind of get a better preview of what's going to go on. The default strength of the sun, though, when you change it, is like 1,000, which is really bright, particularly if you have bloom on, right? So I usually set this to like 20, right? So I'll turn that strength down a lot for that sun. But it's easy enough to just take the light that already exists in our scene, go to the kind of green light bulb icon, and just change it to one of these other light types, right? So instead of a point light, it's a directional light, which is what sunlight works as. And this will work well for us, right? Now remember, right now we have kind of our EV material preview set up. Remember, there's a little ball here right next to it on the side that is actually your full renderer, right? And everything's already on there, but we click on the last one for full render. Remember, there is this icon not right at the top. Right at the top is the wrench and screwdriver, right? But there's one right below it that's kind of that briefcase, microwave, radio kind of looking thing. Right now, the render engine is set to Eevee. I want to switch that to cycle, so I get full global illumination, full ray tracing for my render, right? We can also kind of turn on things like denoise, right? It's already kind of on for the render, but you can open it up and you can switch to whatever kind of type you want, right? But denoising kind of can make the image cleaner when it renders, right? But it's kind of on by default for the render already. At this point, what I want to do is I want to go to the world icon up here, right? And I'm going to do some review lecture for you guys on this tomorrow as well. But also you have the video. So the last thing we do is there's this little kind of red world icon, right? Which kind of looks almost like a line through it, right? What's cool about this is you'll see there's an area that's called background, right? And one of the things we could do is click on, I think it's color, click on color yellow dot. And what we could do is we could find the sky texture here. I think it's sky texture. I'm always trying to remember if it's environment or sky. I'll find out in a minute. Sky, right? I thought it was sky, yeah. And you notice it plugs in this actual sky. So if you just go up to the kind of red world and you click on the yellow dot color, you can actually pick, instead of an image texture, although you can plug an image texture into this. Also, if you don't click on the yellow dot, you can just change the color. But in this case, I thought it'd be cool to show you sky texture because it actually gives you a sky background. Now, there's more to this than that, though. You can play with the sun elevation, right? You could play with the sun rotation to put it at different angles, right? You can play with altitude, strength, sun intensity, right? So what I can do is if I keep turning up sun elevation, you see how it can get to kind of more of like kind of a noon setting instead of sunset. You see how your kind of color background actually changes to kind of have a sky color? And of course, the lower you turn down the sun elevation, the more it looks like sunset. And here's how you can go below 0, and you start to get really sunset settings. All right? So the sky background's really cool. You can play with the sun intensity a little bit if you want your sun to be a little bit more intense. You can play sun size. In this case, we're not going to see the sun, but you play with sun rotation. You can play with the overall strength. But you can also play with sun elevation, and that actually kind of changes, if you will, the time of day, right? The closer sun elevation is to 0, the more it'll be sunset or start to go into night. The higher the number is, the more it'll kind of be like noon. But it's a neat kind of background setting we have, right? So kind of remember that you have some of these kind of neat little controls there. And this one I forgot to have that texture map in there for metallic. But I'll just turn that up just to give it a little bit more reflection. Because remember, you can control that. I can turn roughness down. There we go. In this case, this is kind of an older one, right? And I don't have the metallic roughness map plugged in, but we have videos for that. But I'd figure I'd turn that up a little bit just to kind of see that we can get that reflection back on it. And it's just kind of a neat way to actually get kind of a more interesting render for this like hovercraft spaceship, right? We can kind of make it kind of a sunset by using sky texture. So remember, I did kind of make sure to kind of, I'm going to do the render here in a minute, but I did make sure to click on this little V to the left right here to open this up. I did go down to view to turn camera to view, so it enables our normal camera navigation, right? Alt, left, middle, right mouse buttons for adjusting the camera. And then I just go to view, cameras, active camera. From there, right, like we said, we just kind of, selected our light, made sure it was on. Go down to the light here, change it to sun, turn the strength down to like 20, right? If you give it a little bit of angle, it'll soften the shadows. So I've got a little bit of like 11-degree angle on there to soften the shadows a bit. And then, of course, like we said, we could make sure to go up to the little render guy up here, change the render engine to cycles. And then we can go down to world, and we just clicked on the yellow dot for color and picked sky texture, and it gives us these that we can play with the settings for. Kind of neat, right? Kind of cool what you could do with this. And then when we're happy and we like what we've got, right, we can always go, and I'm going to save, go to Save As here really quick and save this as Paint Render. That way I've got this. Let's see, Spaceship. Call this Spaceship Render. So, and then, of course, we can do our final render itself, right? So remember, there is a render menu right here, and there is render image. The only thing you want to make sure of, though, is rendering at the proper resolution. Right, there's the wrench and screwdriver, there's kind of that little radio-looking icon. But there's also one right below it that looks kind of like a printer. It's the third one down. If I click on this, you'll see that it actually has it already set to be 1080, right? 1920 1080 at 100%. So realistically, that's fine for our render, right? The default's actually already a pretty good default. But I want to make sure to show you can play with that. If you want to do some test renders, you could always render at a lower percentage, kind of to test it, stuff like that. But I just want to point that out. And of course, I can go to render image. And now it's going to go through here and render this up. And like I said, denoising is already on, so it'll kind of go through there and complete the render, denoise it. Just got to give it a bit of time here to finish its rendering, right? But this is basically how you render it, right? Now, technically, you can actually take this into Compositor and add your glow that way. In this case, I feel like I'm just going to hit escape to stop the render. If I let it go, it's going to keep denoising it, but that's going to take a little longer than I want in this video, right? I don't want to have it render for a couple minutes while in the video. But usually you can hit escape to kind of stop the render at its stage. And you can go to image save, right? Or save as. We can call this, you know, spaceship render. PNG will probably be fine, but if you wanted to go JPEG, that's okay too, right? Save as image, that's save the render. And what I can actually do is I can then go to the compositing menu right here, right? I can go to use nodes, and you'll actually see that it shows the actual render right here, right? And I'm going to go to add. I'm just trying to remember what it is. There's a, I want to say output. Yeah. So if you go add, output, you can go to viewer, right? And I can put this over here. And then I could always just left click drag on this image yellow dot to image here. And then you'll see it actually kind of shows it in the background. Right? Now, ultimately, if you don't end up adding this glare I'm about to show you, not the end of the world. You still got to render, right? So this is just if you really want to get that glare and that bloom to show off a little better. But kind of just to be able to see it here, it's kind of useful to add that viewer node, right? That's output viewer. But if we go down here to, I have to remember where it's at, filter, there's something called glare, right? And we can just drop this, move it, drop it here. And once again, this is one of those things where we could actually kind of, right, plug in the image node to here. I'm trying to remember if it's that or if it's this. It might be this one. Let's see here. Nope. Trying to remember. Actually, we left click drag over this, right? Remember, we left drag over. You tell how often I do this, right? Enough to know how to do it, but not enough that sometimes I have to just remind myself a little bit. Remember, you could drag whatever node it is over a line, and it plugs it in there. And now you see we've got this massive amount of glare. So that's where you can start to kind of turn this to, say, fog glow. Works better as a glow, right? And you can play with kind of the threshold, turning it up or down to kind of give you a little more control over it. The threshold kind of gives you a control for it. And it just adds that little bit of glow there to it, right? So kind of keep that in mind, right, that if you really want to get the full glow, you can get it right there. And then basically it's just, I'm trying to remember how to save that, though, because there's a way to save. I want to say, yeah, we go back to the rendering one here. Yep. And then we go to, see, viewer node, right? You see how it kind of actually shows the stock render, right, which is your render result, right? And then if you kind of click on that one and you go down to viewer node, it shows the viewer with kind of the intervening compositing stuff plugged in for glare. And then what you could do is you can actually go to image here, We can save as, and maybe I'll save this as render 2, right? And save image, right? And then we can actually go down to probably the desktop here and find where I've been saving that at. Somewhere in here, right? Let's see here. There it is. Let's see where the JPEGs are at. Oh, there it is. And you see how that one's got the glare for it? So that's basically it, right? If you don't really add the glare, not a big deal. But it's this neat kind of little extra thing you could do with Blender using its compositor setup. It is a few extra steps, but that will kind of serve to get you kind of a final render of your ship with the sky background. All right, that's a great place to stop.